There was once a society that had no word for enemy, not because they were naive, not because they had never encountered violence or scarcity or the kind of pressure that turns groups of people against each other, but because across thousands of years of recorded existence, they had built something that most historians assumed was impossible, a functioning human civilization that had never developed organized warfare as a response to conflict. They were not a small, isolated tribe with no neighbors to fight. They were one of the largest, most densely populated, most architecturally sophisticated societies of the ancient world. And they did it without armies, without fortifications, without weapons designed for killing other humans at scale. The civilization was the Indus Valley Civilization. It flourished across what is now Pakistan and northwestern India from approximately 3300 BCE to 1900 BCE, over 1,000 years of continuous urban life. At its peak, it contained more than 5 million people spread across more than 1,000 settlements. Its two largest cities, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, each had populations of between 30 and 50,000 people. In 2600 BCE, when those cities were thriving, the entire population of Britain was around 100,000 people. What archaeologists found when they excavated those cities beginning in the 1920s was a society that defied almost every assumption the field had brought to the dig. There were no palaces, no temples built to glorify a ruler, no royal tombs filled with treasure and the bodies of sacrificed servants, no monuments to military victory, no carvings of kings conquering enemies, no iconography of domination of any kind. What there was instead was infrastructure, sophisticated, standardized, city-wide infrastructure of a kind that would not appear again in human history for another 1,000 years. Every house in Mohenjo-daro had access to a private bathroom. Every neighborhood connected to a centralized sewage system, brick-lined drains running beneath the streets, covered and maintained, carrying waste away from the residential areas. The city had a great bath, a large public water tank built with such precision that it remained watertight for 4,000 years until archaeologists drained it in the 20th century. Standardized weights and measures were used across the entire civilization, the same units found in cities 1,200 kilometers apart, indicating a level of trade coordination and shared standards that implied central organization without any evidence of central authority enforcing it. The streets were laid on a grid. The bricks were a standard size across every city in the civilization, a ratio of 1 to 2 to 4 that modern engineers recognize as optimal for construction. The granaries were positioned to receive deliveries from outside the city walls without requiring the carts to enter the residential areas. Someone designed all of this. Someone coordinated it across a geographic area the size of Western Europe. And whoever that was left no throne, no tomb, and no monument to themselves. The absence of weapons is what arrested archaeologists most. Weapons of war, spears, axes, arrowheads designed for penetrating human armor are among the most common artifacts found at ancient civilizations of comparable size. In Egypt, in Mesopotamia, in the early Chinese civilizations, in the pre-Columbian Americas, the archaeology of power is written in weapons and fortifications and the bones of the conquered. At Indus Valley sites, the weapons are almost entirely absent. What hunting tools existed were light and functional. The few copper and bronze objects found were tools, not arms. The city walls that existed were modest and appear to have been built against flooding, not invasion. For over 1,000 years, across 5 million people and 1,000 cities, the material record of organized human violence is essentially silent. This is not a matter of interpretation, it is an absence in the archaeological record so consistent and so complete that it has forced researchers to take seriously a possibility that runs against almost everything the historical record of other civilizations suggests, that organized warfare is not an inevitable feature of complex human society, that it is a choice, or more precisely, that it is a solution to problems of resource distribution and social conflict, and that other solutions are possible, and that at least one civilization found them and used them for longer than the entirety of recorded European history. The question that has occupied researchers since the Indus Valley sites were first excavated is not just what this civilization built, it is how it held together without the mechanisms that every other comparable civilization used. No kings enforcing order through the threat of violence, no military class maintaining hierarchy, no religious authority backed by the power of the state. Something else was providing the social cohesion that kept 5 million people coordinated across 1,200 kilometers of territory for over 1,000 years. The leading hypothesis is that it was trade. The Indus Valley Civilization was one of the most commercially active societies of the ancient world. Archaeological evidence of Indus Valley goods has been found as far away as Mesopotamia and the Persian Gulf. The standardized weights and measures were not just a convenience, they were a shared language of exchange that bound the civilization's cities together in a network of mutual economic dependence. When your prosperity depends on the functioning of the trading network, destroying a city in that network destroys your own supply chain. The economics of cooperation may have been more powerful than the economics of conquest. But then something happened. Between 1900 BCE and 1700 BCE, the civilization collapsed. The cities were abandoned, the population dispersed, the infrastructure fell into disuse, the great sewage systems silted up, the standardized brick production stopped. What ended it is one of the most debated questions in ancient history, and the answer is still not settled. The earliest hypothesis, that it was destroyed by an invasion of Indo-Aryan peoples from the north, has largely been abandoned by mainstream archaeology. The skeletal evidence does not support a violent conquest. Most of the bodies found at the sites show no signs of trauma. The cities appeared to have been evacuated, not destroyed. The current leading explanations are environmental. Climate change, a prolonged drought driven by a shift in monsoon patterns, appears to have begun reducing agricultural yields across the region from around 2000 BCE. The rivers that the civilization depended on for irrigation and trade routes began shifting course. The Ghaggar-Hakra river system, which had supported hundreds of Indus Valley settlements, dried up almost completely. Without water, the agricultural base that supported 5 million urban dwellers collapsed. Without agriculture, the trade network that had bound the cities together lost its foundation. Without the trade network, the social cohesion that had replaced kings and armies and temples had nothing left to hold it. The civilization did not fall to a conqueror, it fell to a drought. Which means the thing that destroyed the only large-scale human civilization that appears to have genuinely solved the problem of organized warfare was not another army. It was the climate, a force that no trade network and no architecture and no standardized system of weights and measures could negotiate with. The Indus Valley Civilization built something extraordinary. It lasted longer than the Roman Empire. It housed more people than any contemporary civilization on Earth. It did it without palaces, without monuments to power, without weapons designed to kill at scale. And it ended not in conquest, but in silence, cities slowly emptying as the water table fell and the rivers moved and the rains stopped coming. The last people to leave Mohenjo-Daro walked out of a city with perfectly functioning drains and left no record of where they went. What they had built was real. What ended it was not proof that it could not work. It was proof that nothing, no matter how well designed, survives the ground shifting beneath it.